Hey Al.
Hey Heinz, and welcome to episode 19. And from episode to 1 to 18, we had some excellent people we have interviewed. And today, the person we're going to interview, I first kind of heard a little bit about his story in 2008, 2007, when I actually was going through an operation myself and laying down and listening to an audio book called A Life in My Hands about Professor Charlie Teo. And I'm lucky again now to hear someone I once heard about to get a chance to talk to him. Professor Charlie Teo, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Alan. It's lovely to meet you.
No, it is. And like I said, I first heard about you in that book, and it was, a great part of my recovery, just hearing a book. And it helped because, I heard part of a story of someone going through an incredible, life-changing time in his life. And then the other side, what you don't normally hear, is what the doctor has to think and get a group of people behind. And the story was well written.
She's a lovely person, that author, and she spent 6 years with me, so it was pretty accurate, actually. Everything she wrote was from personal experience and spending time with me over that period of time.
And did you like someone following you around that time? Was it interesting to have a book wrote about you and
Well, I'm a bit of a show-off, Alan, so it doesn't bother me, having someone watch me operate. I actually quite enjoy teaching and sharing, what I'm going through. So no, it wasn't a burden at all. She's a very lovely lady, so she made it very comfortable for me.
Excellent. And like I said, I really enjoy it. Charlie, what I do is just kind of settle in. One of the things I do at the start, I have a question thing I have at the start of doing the podcast. I have question the top, the middle, and the bottom, and I get the person to choose which question. We don't know what it is, and then I'm going to get Heinz to read it out today and see if you can answer it. So I'll get you to choose top, middle, or bottom.
We'll go for the top, please.
Okay, I'll let you go, Heinz.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so the top question is if you could step into the shoes of any person in history, it be real or fictional, for just one day, who would it be? And what would you want to experience or learn from them?
It's very easy. It's Nelson Mandela.
Really?
I mean, for a
Amazing.
guy to have been persecuted wrongly, incarcerated for 27 years, and to not feel bitter or resentment to his captors and his enemies is something that I just can't fathom. And hatred, revenge, resentment, they're all negative emotions that really eat away at you and destroy you. They're the source of illness and stress. And for a man to have gone through that and feel no ill will towards his enemies is remarkable. I don't know how he did it. And I would love to just to spend a day with him to understand his philosophy and his thinking as to why he managed to rise above the hatred and show love, compassion, and leadership. When there can't be a single person in the world who I can imagine would have been able to fill those shoes.
That's amazing. And like you said, it's he was an amazing person, and I read some of his biographies too, and
Oh,
just
I thought you were going to say you interviewed him for your podcast as well, Alan.
oh who knows what could happen, but when you said that, and I mean, I don't want to go too much through some of your controversy, but it's amazing when I was researching, and of course I use more audio to do research, and it's amazing with your story is the news is always say controversy, Charlie Teo or Professor Charlie Teo, and it's amazing how they can all follow each other, and that word controversy always comes up. Is that hard at times to hear? And the only, like when you are, I know it's been hard for you in America now when people search or you try to, go to America. How difficult has that made it for you?
Oh, it's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. I mean, I guess it's not terrible in that. I am controversial, but
Yeah.
it's terrible in that they use it in a very negative connotation and a very negative way, almost as if I wanted to be controversial or I, sought out controversy. Right from the get-go, Alan, I've never sought controversy. I've always wanted to be part of the mainstream, really. And I just thought that by doing what doctors should do, i.e., obey the Hippocratic Oath and put your patients first, that I would be part of the mainstream. I wouldn't be controversial. I certainly wouldn't be outside the box. And so I personally don't think I've done anything wrong in terms of being a doctor. I don't think I've done anything wrong in terms of seeking out attention or seeking out celebrity. I don't think done anything wrong in terms of, being controversial. It was never my intention. I really don't think I am, well, I am, but I really don't think I should be, because really, at the end of the day, what has separated me from the mainstream is that I've obeyed patient autonomy. That's all I've done. I've listened to my patients. I've respected their wishes. I've done what they've wanted me to do, and that's what other doctors don't do. Most doctors, primarily look after their own professional life, professional sort of standing, rather than putting their patients first. And what's happened to me, sadly, has reinforced their behaviour, because it says basically, if you do what Charlie Teo did, i.e., put his patients first, do what they wanted, not really look after himself, then this is what's going to happen to you. We're going to destroy you. We're going to kill your professional life, and you won't be able to practice medicine anymore.
One thing, excuse me, one thing I have enjoyed about hearing and reading a little bit about you is it would have been easy to go with the crowd and kind of say, okay, I have to go with it and be accepted by him. So I think you have shown you have accepted who you are, accepted what you believe your values are, and what you're doing, your beliefs right. And you haven't stepped back from any of that word controversy, and you have not allowed anyone to sway you the other way. And I think it shows strong values because you believe you're right. And I think that has to be honoured in a way as well, to never be able to change for the crowd.
Look, you nailed it, Alan, because that's exactly the situation. But sadly, people who have a conviction or an agenda, they follow it to the end, and sometimes it's not for the greater good, and it's for themselves or whatever. So having dogged perseverance for an evil act, for example, is wrong. You
Yeah.
know, having dogged perseverance when you're doing the right thing or taking the high road, that of course is great. But the sad thing about the whole thing, Alan, is that it doesn't pay off.
No.
It just doesn't pay off. I mean, they are still gunning for me. They're
Yeah.
still going to. I mean, they haven't stopped. I thought they'd stop when they sort of, smeared my name and besmirched my character and stopped me from operating. But no, that wasn't enough. They still continued, and to this day, they're continuing. So the most recent thing is I had a visit from the medical council. The medical council are auditing me to make sure that I obey my restrictions. And they found that means they have to go through all your medical records and see if you've broken or breached your restrictions. Well, one of my restrictions was that I wasn't allowed to operate on recurrent malignant brain tumours without permission from another neurosurgeon. I was happy to accept that restriction. Sadly, of course, no one stood up to the plate and accepted that responsibility. So I could never find a supervisor. I could never find anyone to give me permission. So of course, I wasn't able to operate in Australia on those cases. Anyway, they searched through my records and they found a case of a lady who they believe is an example of me breaching my restrictions, i.e., operating on a recurrent malignant glioma. And so her situation is very simple. They thought she had a malignant glioma. They biopsied it over in Western Australia. It came back as a malignant glioma. Then they recommended radiotherapy and chemotherapy because they called it inoperable. And she rejected those treatments and they told her she would die within 6 to 12 weeks, which is true if it was a malignant glioma.
Mm.
Well, a year later, she's still alive. And so she thinks to herself, well, hang on, they told me I'd be dead. The tumor hasn't grown. Maybe they got it wrong. She sends her case to me. I go, of course they got it wrong. It can't be a malignant glioma because you'd be dead by now. So, and not only that, it is operable. So I took it out, saved her life, got the tumor out, completely gone, not a malignant glioma. So they did get it wrong. It's a benign tumor, and now she's cured. Okay. So they say, so in other words, I saved her life when no one else was willing to do it. They call it a recurrent malignant glioma, one, because I operated after a biopsy. Now, they never took it out, so it wasn't recurrent. It was still the original tumor. And they go, well, it's a malignant glioma. I go, it's not a malignant glioma. They got it wrong. And the biopsy was wrong. It never behaved like a malignant glioma. It didn't look like a malignant glioma. And now that we've taken it out, it's not a malignant glioma. So for two very good reasons, number one, it wasn't recurrent. And number two, it wasn't malignant glioma. I was perfectly justified in operating on that lady. And not only that, she's alive and I've saved her life. Anyway, but they have insisted that because there was a second operation, it's a recurrence. And because the first biopsy came back as a malignant glioma, it's a malignant glioma, and I should never have offered surgery. I go, okay, so in other words, I should have let her die when I could have saved her life. And he looked at me perplexed. He goes, Charlie, look, this is the order. He goes, why are you doing this anyway? And I go, well, because it's the right thing by the patient. And he says it again, he goes, yeah, but why are you doing it? I mean, it's not for money. I can see that you didn't even charge that patient. And it's not, you've proved yourself that you're a great neurosurgeon. Why are you doing it? I mean, Alan, they have no idea that, it's not about me. It's not about my career. It's not about my reputation. And it's not about my back pocket. It's about what doctors should be doing, and that is treating their patients, putting their interests first,
Yep.
and obeying patient autonomy. And here's this guy, he's in a authoritative role, and he cannot understand that concept. He just couldn't understand. He asked the question 2 or 3 times, why are you doing this? Oh my God, Alan.
Well, I tell you, Charlie, I think it was one of the episodes or something, and I heard your daughter say, and I think she's a million times smarter than her, saying cancer is the bad person. Cancer's the evil thing. We shouldn't be chasing dad. We should be chasing the cancer, the evil thing, and we're chasing their dad, and the
100%.
evil thing is cancer. So
100%.
when I heard that, I said, I'm not sure which daughter it was, and not being able to see it, so I can't explain it. But I'm saying, what wise words from a young girl when all these people who are highly intelligent and supposed to have gone through university courses or media with all this experience, and one young person who's still young in this world can explain it that way.
I think, Alan, it's a reflection of the way the world is going, and certainly the way Australia is going. We're kind of lost, we've lost sight of the big picture, and we've lost sight of reality, and we're too consumed by political correctness and regulation and wokeness, and it's sort of overtaken our common sense. I mean, common sense is, imagine if you were a foreigner or an alien from another planet and you came down and said, oh, why can't Charlie Teo operate in Australia anymore? Oh, the guy was too optimistic. He gave second opinions that were different to the first opinion.
Yeah.
And I mean, that just doesn't make sense. It's almost like, why did Julian Assange, why was he incarcerated for 13 years? Oh, the guy told the truth. He revealed the truth.
Mm.
And you'd look at that and go, hang on, something's a bit wrong here.
Oh, mate, I can hear how frustrating it's for you because, and I go by voice and sound, and if that makes sense to you with my, I suppose, call it disability, and I can hear realness in your voice, and you can hear you would have came from it before when you met someone. You can hear when someone's fake in their voice or their aura, how they come over. It's very easy to pick up a fake person. And what you're saying, you have said from day one, even in that book in 2008, and hearing when, about you being a young student coming through, your position of what you believe in has never changed. So when people say it's about money, you weren't making money back then. You were working, extraordinary hours, probably getting no sleep and, just working every day of your life. And your values and what you said back then haven't changed. And I don't see when the media or people can say it's about money, when you go back and look at the history of you, it's never changed.
Media had an agenda, Alan. You're absolutely right. What you're basically saying is it never passed the pub test. And
Yep.
you're absolutely right. Why have the Australian public been so supportive and so lovely? It's because I'm sure they look back and go, hang on, hang on. This guy was hailed as a hero for 30 years, operating on people that no one else would operate on, saving lives. And then suddenly overnight, he's this terrible villain, reckless surgeon, operating on the wrong side of the brain, doing it for money. Isn't there something a bit weird, a bit wrong about that? And it was all about this agenda that the media had. It was all an agenda. It had nothing to do with the truth. It had nothing to do with reporting, fairly on both sides of the story. It was just an agenda that they wanted to use to destroy me and cut me down to size.
Yeah. And as we said, and getting into the media, amazingly, the media will break you or make you, sadly, in this world. And, they could have came in, as you said, and said everyone should go to Charlie Teo and, made a TV series, a reality TV series, and you would have been followed. But, they can turn it on a head in a second and destroy someone's beliefs, thoughts, and career.
Well, the saddest thing about it all, Alan, is that, we all listen to the media. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm guilty of it myself. When I hear something in the media, my immediate reaction, it's wrong, but my immediate reaction is, oh my God, did that really happen? We believe the media. That's what we were brought up to do. That's what makes common sense, to always believe what you hear because people don't lie inherently. So, all of us are guilty of watching, listening, reading the media and believing it. Sure, a lot of us then sit back and go, hang on, that doesn't quite sound right. Maybe I should look into it more, or maybe I should get the other side of the story. And so, we're learning to question it more, but our immediate default reaction is to believe it. And once you believe it, it'll always have that little place in your head. I mean, look at poor old Jeffrey Rush. He was accused of sexual harassment or something terrible. They found that it was all false. He was found not guilty. And yet every time you hear his name now, unfortunately, you think, hang on, maybe there's an element of truth in it.
Yeah.
So, the worst thing about what they did to me is that, people once thought that I was, a good servant, integrity and all this kind of stuff. But every time my name comes up now, people, I'm sure they think, well, actually, maybe he is doing it for money, or maybe he's not as good as he says he is, and so it'll always, unfortunately, stick, Alan.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that stigma.
And I heard you say once what's true. Well, when they're talking you about what you have done, when there's doctors out there who have been, caught for sexual assault before, sexually assaulted staff before, and they're still working in the industry, and they haven't been shut down or pulling out private parts, and you're doing this, and are they getting audited or getting looked at, or what you're doing wrong, or
No, no.
and you're again. I would love to know how many doctors have been ordered in the last couple of months when you just got ordered to, whenever you said you did.
Yeah,
And
I know it's really sad that I had nothing to see. When you look back at that, Alan, it's got nothing to do with right or wrong.
no,
It's got nothing to do with what is fair or what is unfair. It's everything to do with some sort of hidden agenda that someone has. I mean, you're absolutely right. There are people, I was found guilty of professional misconduct. And whether you like it or not, when you hear that, you think, oh, gee, what has the guy done? Professional misconduct. You think maybe he sexually assaulted someone, maybe he came in drunk, maybe he was taking drugs. No, my misconduct was that I gave an opinion that was too optimistic.
Yeah.
And the second case was I gave an opinion that was contrary to the the multidisciplinary team that said the tumour was inoperable. They then came down hard on me and said, because these 6 doctors called it inoperable, you have to call it inoperable as well. I mean, and yet there are people out there who are professors of neurosurgery who have been, oh my God, talk about misconduct. They've slept with their registrars, they've got them pregnant, they've sent those registrars off to another city to so that they can sort of bury their past. There are surgeons out there who've been convicted of pedophilia.
Yeah.
And confessed to pedophilia. There are doctors out there who've been taking drugs. There's doctors out there who have never even, do operations on a patient, never even seen the patient. I just saw one today. I saw a lady today. I go, who
Yeah.
was your neurosurgeon? Oh, I don't know. Well, when you met them, what did they say? Oh, we never met them. Are you telling me you've never met your neurosurgeon either before or after the operation? Yes. I get those stories every day,
Mm.
and yet I was dragged over the coals for being too optimistic with my consent. Not that I spent a lot of time with that family. I really cared for them. And yet here I am unable to operate, and those people are still operating like, they've done nothing wrong. It's the whole thing is just crazy, Alan. It's gone crazy.
Yeah, and I want to get into some other things about what you have talked about. And I I think I have heard you say people, I told a few people who are friends and that I was going to be talking to you. And it's amazing they say, oh, he can't operate here in Australia or this. They don't know the full story where I've heard you say, if a hospital allows you to operate, you could operate on as many patients tomorrow. So the false idea of what your restrictions are, again, people have no idea. They're just hearing a report that you can't. But
Yeah.
tomorrow, if a hospital had the guts to say, Charlie, come and operate. We need you to save these people. You'll be there, and you'll be able to.
I need one person, Alan, decent person who would put patient care above everything else, above politics, and I could operate tomorrow. They didn't take my license off me.
Mm.
They didn't put any restrictions on my operating. There was only those 2 cases, recurrent malignant glioma and brainstem gliomas. I can still operate on them, but I just need to get permission. So all it would take is one decent person to say, listen, this guy can operate at my hospital. I'm happy for him to operate at my hospital, and I could operate on Australian patients today, tomorrow. Uh, there's just one decent person.
Right. Well, I think what it is what we're losing out because there's lucky countries like Spain who you're going to now. I know you have a lot of respect for operating in China and I think Germany. So these countries are, they're getting your experience and you're probably training some doctors over there as well, where that experience here is, needed. It's hard. I know when I had to see a neurologist a while back and that, they'll say 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks before you can get in. We need more neurologists. We need more doctors doing the training, more doctors who want to move forward and help patients when, what are we doing?
No,
It's
it's crazy. It's crazy, and it's not money either. I mean,
no,
you don't even have to pay me. I've
no,
offered every patient on whom I've operated overseas. I say to them, listen, I will operate on you free of charge in Australia if you can get a neurosurgeon in Australia to invite me to operate or give me temporary privileges at a hospital. I will do your operation in Australia free of charge. I've offered that to every patient. And
yeah,
not a single neurosurgeon has offered for me to. Well, that's not true. That's not true. There's a neurosurgeon in Melbourne who's a lovely guy, great surgeon. He invited me down to Melbourne to operate with him because he couldn't do the surgery and he knew I could. And guess what? His colleague said over our dead body and stopped him from doing it. So, it's just the world's full of evil, Alan.
feels like the mafia.
It's like, it's
Yeah,
all sad.
it's amazing to say that because my ophthalmologist, he's a professor, I won't know his name, but he's a great doctor, and I've been friends with him for over 20 years. He came to my wife's wedding and that. And what I have learned, and his children are becoming doctors, and when I was in personal training, I actually trained doctors. And I think people don't understand, and I'm going to ask you just to go through some of it. People don't understand. They think, okay, you're a doctor. Like we say, people are saying, oh, he's earning so much money. But there's so many years before that. But when you get that certificate, it's not like, okay, I can go away and, I know how to put a table together. There's still ongoing training, ongoing study, time away from the family, time where you go and help, poor countries to learn this for 3 or so months a year. And people don't understand. It's just like, turn off, I got my certificate. I don't get, people think, oh, you made the money and now you don't care. When your study never ends, does it?
No, I mean, doctors should never cry poor because you make a very decent salary and a
Yeah.
bit decent living. So that's the first thing. You do get paid well. But the second thing is exactly like you say, it's a long, hard road to get there. So when most people go to university or do a degree or do an apprenticeship, I guess by about the time they're 25 or 26, they're starting to earn pretty good money. A doctor, on the other hand, has to do 1 year of this, 5 years of that, 6 years of this, 1 year of that, and you usually don't start earning money until you're about 35. That's when you've done your fellowship. So, firstly, you've lost 10 years of good income because you're learning for that period of time. Secondly, you've got to understand that you take you work home. It's not a 9 to 5 job. It's a 24/7 job. So when you even it out over the number of hours that you spend on a patient, then they did that. They've done studies that showed it was like $26 an hour a doctor will get paid because there's hours and hours and hours that they spend, and not only that, your post-operative care it comes into that as well. And then finally, and this is something that really irks me, when you complain about Hollywood celebrities getting paid so much money, or sportsmen who are the top of their game. The argument for it is, well, they're unique. They're doing something that no one else will do. Their face is something that no one else can replicate. Their acting ability is so good or something. They're unique, and that's what they're getting paid for. They get the big dollars because they're the best at what they do. Well, why can't doctors get paid big dollars because they're the best of what they do?
Yeah.
Because, everyone thinks that all doctors are the same level. There's no such thing as a good one or a bad one or a top one or a not so top one. And so, when a doctor who is top of his game starts earning good money, they resent it because they think that he should be earning the same money as any other doctor. Yet he's doing something that no one in the world can do. In other words, he has that same unique capability or capacity as a celebrity or a top sportsman.
Yeah. No, I
And
totally get.
the
I
money side
totally.
of things is I look, I don't even like talking about that because I would love it if all doctors were on a salary and all people got access to equal care. That's what I would
Yep.
love because I think that's fair.
Mm,
And I'm sure you've done your research. When I came back from America, I
yep.
saw what greed did to doctors and how they were making decisions based on money. And I didn't want to ever be in that situation. So I came back and I said, I want to be a staff specialist. I applied to be a staff specialist. I was brought on as a staff specialist because I didn't want to go into private practice. I never wanted to be tempted by money. And that's the sort of person I was. The only reason I went into private practice is because as a staff specialist, it took a whole year before I even got a computer. I never got a desk. I never got a secretary. And
Yep.
the public system was broken and I had to sort of get out of it if I wanted to do what I was going to do. But ideally, yeah, I'd love to be salaried, and I'd love where money doesn't even come into it. It's not
Yep.
even part of the equation.
And that's what I said when I went back and read your book or listened to your book. I heard when you came back to Australia, you went into the public hospital to try to help people, and you did find it hard for other doctors even back then to accept you, to try to show the skills you had and how fast we could advance Australia into neurology back then, and you were getting pushed down then. So what you do now has never changed to when you first came back to Australia with your beliefs and what you do with, excuse me, with your operations. Um, just one thing, what I found really interesting when you said you're going through that bad time, you went to India tell me about a person you met and he followed you around, or you talked to him for a few days.
Yes. It was pure serendipity. I've never really been depressed, Alan.
Yep.
I've never really sort of gone into a state of melancholia or, feeling down and not being happy. I've always been a pretty happy person, but, that was hard times. I'd just
Yep.
gone through a divorce. I had no income. I was working as an Uber driver just to make ends meet.
Well, that's crazy.
I had lost my reputation. I couldn't practice what I loved doing. I'd lost my ability to, you know, practice my vocation, and life was pretty bad. And I was having breakfast. I was doing some pro bono work in India, teaching and operating. And I was having breakfast at the cheap hotel that I was in, and this guy sat next to me and goes, "What's the problem?" I go, "What do you mean? There's no problem." He goes, "You don't look too happy. You don't look too well." And I go, "Oh, no, actually, I'm fine." And no, he told me the truth. And so, and I poured out my guts to this complete stranger, and he turned out to be a guru. And he said, "Listen, just spend a few days with me, and I'll get you back on the straight and narrow." And I did, and it didn't really take 3 days. It only took one very deep and meaningful conversation, and the conversation basically revolved around, what we all know, and what we all know is that uh, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yep.
For every door that closes, there's a door that opens. And in his own words, his mantra is, it'll all make sense one day. And so it's a great philosophy because, there's always, in everyone's life, there's ups and downs, and there's always an up to every down, and there's a bright side to every dark side. So, you just have to you have to be reminded of that occasion. That's all.
I think you do, and like I said, I really enjoyed that story, and that's one kind of I wanted to start off with some of that stuff we started, so people can really understand the story and hear the truth than just hearing little bits of news here or what they hear from friends. And one of the things I want to get to is this incredible app you have made with a friend. Can you explain a little bit about this app?
Oh, yeah, no, it's something I'm very proud of, actually. And it's something that, again, if anyone wants to take away the positive side of this story, is that, I think one day I'll actually thank that terrible journalist who brought me down,
Yep.
who took it upon herself to bring me down. Because, if it wasn't for her, I would have been operating 100 hours a week like I was before, and having no real time to sit down and think and reflect. And so when I was forced to stop operating, it gave me time to actually use my intellect again. And that culminated in a medical data software company that I believe, will change the world. It is changing the world, one person at a time right now. Essentially, it's as simple as this. When you look at specialists in medicine, we all have our ability to objectively assess our patients. A neurosurgeon has an MRI scan that can see where the tumor is, take the tumor out, repeat the MRI scan, see the tumor's gone. An orthopedic surgeon has an X-ray that when the patient comes in with a broken leg, they do the X-ray, they fix it, and the break, and then they X-ray again, and the break's fixed. And we all have our means of assessing patients, but sadly, there are two specialists who don't, and that is a neurologist and a psychiatrist. And a psychiatrist has no means at all of objectively assessing their patients. There's no blood test that tells you that you're depressed. There's no scan that tells you that you're depressed. There's no imaging at all. And similarly, a neurologist, there's nothing that will show you a neurodegenerative disease in its early stages. There's nothing that will show you early stage MCI, mild cognitive impairment, or dementia. So there's all these conditions that cannot be sadly assessed objectively. Well, the software that we came up with has changed that landscape completely. It has now allowed a doctor to order a functional MRI scan that is not just task-based, in other words, showing some, you know, single action like hand movement, but it will actually show you the function of the brain for every function of the brain. I'm
Incredible.
talking imagination, empathy, uh, happiness, sadness. This scan will show you every function of the brain. If you then compare that patient's scan with a normal person's scan, you will see areas that are functioning or where the activity is more than 3 standard deviations beyond normal. These areas can then be modified using things like transcranial magnetic stimulation to normalize these areas of abnormal function or abnormal activity. And the results are that the patient becomes normalized. So you can scan a patient with depression. You can see areas that are overactive or underactive. You can normalize those areas, and guess what? The depression gets better. And it's a major breakthrough. I'm incredibly proud of it. I'm not the brains behind it, but I'm certainly the one who encouraged these very clever people to get together and create it. It's been very well accepted all around the world now. Sadly, not in Australia yet, but Australia typically is quite behind when it comes to accepting new technology. But certainly in America, 66 universities have bought the software program. They've rebought it because it's a subscription model,
Yeah,
and so it's actually doing very well now around the world.
that's incredible. And again, working hard and something you believe in, and shows, like I said, it keeps coming back from the first time I read your book, the belief I just felt in what you believed in. You're doing part of this app, and trying to help people. And I know you see with some people now with depression, that's another part of your field when people come in, and that's a different field for neurology because people, it's not something they have overly done. So when someone else might come in with depression or something to your clinic or where you are now, what's the steps? What would you do with this patient? Do you use this app? What are the steps?
Yeah. And, if we could take it back 2 steps before
Yep,
we ever start discussing that, Alan, it's very interesting that we, me, and the
yep,
whole world used to think that mental health was not a brain problem.
yeah,
Now, how weird is that? If it wasn't a brain problem, what do we think was going on?
yeah,
And we never thought of it as a brain problem because we thought, oh well, if you've got a brain tumor, you see a neurosurgeon. If you've got Parkinson's, you see a neurologist. But if you've got depression, you don't see a neurologist or a neurosurgeon because there's no part of the brain that can be identified to cause your depression. This is a mental health problem.
yeah,
Well, it turns out that you don't have to think of it like that anymore because, now that we've got these scans, you can actually see these blobs of abnormality, these areas in the brain that are abnormal. It's like it's a brain problem now. So I think the difference between neurology and psychiatry are going to merge imperceptibly very soon, and neurosurgery, and soon anyone who deals with the brain is going to use one of these scans to deal with all the conditions of the brain, including depression, anxiety, PTSD, dementia, you name it, schizophrenia, all of those conditions. So now, when a patient comes in with depression, well, at the clinic, they mostly see a psychiatrist. But if they want to see me, I would
mm,
scan them with this special
yep,
scan. I would find out how long their depression had been present for. And you'd be surprised that some people aren't depressed people, but they've had a head injury or they've had some trauma. They've had a blow to the head and suddenly they get this depression. Well, it turns out it's because that head injury damaged a part of the brain that is part of the network that controls mood. And when we see that abnormality, we can now target it, personalize it, and make the treatments patient specific. It's a completely different paradigm. So that's what happens. They see one of the doctors, they scan them, we look at the scan, we see if the abnormalities on the scan match the symptoms, and if they do, then we propose targeting that particular part of the brain to normalize it in the hope that it will help their symptoms.
that's incredible. Two questions actually, and hopefully I can remember the other one. With vision loss, I think I got the name right, and of course you would know it, Charles Bonnet syndrome. I have had that. Would a scan or something pick that up with seeing like could a scan of that certain scan pick that up?
can. It absolutely can.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conditions out there that we never quite understood what part of the brain was involved, if it was real or not. Let me give you one example. There's a thing called the foreign accent syndrome. Have you heard of
Yes.
that?
Yeah, so some people they woke up from being in an accident and can suddenly speak French or something like that.
Yeah, they wake up from a general anesthetic or they have a head injury and suddenly they start speaking in an accent that's completely foreign to them,
Mm.
but they may never have even been to that country, and they cannot stop it. It's not as if they're trying to get attention; they hate it. Anyway, we've scanned people like that, and we've identified the parts of the brain that are abnormal in those people. So all these conditions like the Charles Bonnet syndrome, the foreign accent syndrome, that we used to think, well, maybe these people are just a little bit crazy, or
Yeah.
we can't quite explain that. Well, yeah, no, now we can. Yeah,
No, trust me, when it first happened to me, you do, and you're not sure to talk about it because, you know, it's quite amazing what you can see and what happens in it. And I still get it, and I haven't been able to see for a very, very long time, but
right,
it, it's
right.
in, it's incredible. Going to like that
And the
techno
sad thing there, Alan, is that no one else can see that.
No.
It's like pain.
Yeah.
I feel so sorry for people with pain because, people who have real pain, they complain about it, but everyone goes, oh yeah, right. Well, it can't be that bad, or get over
Yeah.
it, sort of thing. Because wouldn't it be good if you could do a blood test and that person goes, see, my pain markers are 9 out of 10, so I
Mm.
do have pain, and maybe someone would treat them a little bit more seriously and a little bit more compassionately after that. So people who have syndromes or symptoms that cannot be identified objectively, they go through this terrible rigmarole of seeing doctors who don't quite believe them. Then they have to exaggerate their symptoms just to get heard. And then, of course, they become a little bit crazy, and that makes doctors even more skeptical about their symptoms. It's a terrible vicious cycle that they
and
enter.
and emotions. And I'm in a lot of pain, and we've found out I got a eye disease called aniridia,
Hmm.
and well, it's called aniridia syndrome now, or something, not syndrome, it's something like that. But when I first had it, there's only been still small studies on it, and it's getting bigger studies now, but it's still very rare in Australia and around the world. So early on, even I didn't know much about it when doctors talked to me about it because the study was going on, and with my part of it, it has came with pain where there is another one, a person I know, and he doesn't feel pain if something happens to him. So
Right.
it's quite amazing.
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
the other thing I was going to say, I know you have been very, over the years about mobile phones and the cause of, can cause cancer and that, and your beliefs in that. We're moving forward with technology soon. Robots are going to be in the house, and so much technology. We could have robot who's the maid, the person who drives your car, the person who does this. What do you think's the effects of that? Is that the same effects of mobile phones?
So let me preempt by saying I'm not an expert
Yep.
on EMR. All I am is someone who read the literature, did my own sort of research, wrote a paper, and then so now I'm considered a bit of an authority on it, but I'm not.
Yep. Okay.
So I'll say this much. When I first came out and I felt it was my responsibility to warn the public about it, I was absolutely vilified by my colleagues. They mocked me on radio and TV, saying Teo is nothing but an alarmist. He's attention seeking again. Thankfully, I was vindicated because the WHO sanctioned a research article by IARC, the International Association of Research into Cancer, and mobile phones have now been classified as potentially carcinogenic. In other words, potentially they can cause cancer. It's not the highest level of risk, but it's certainly up there. And that was a very, very, very well conducted, multinational trial that basically said, I think we have to watch out, because it could be associated with a higher incidence of brain tumors.
Mm. Yeah, and it's showing, the screens hurting the eyes anyhow. And, mobile phones in our lives only, started in the early 2000s. That but our next generation of children and children having basically a mobile phone or some kind of device in their hand as soon as they're 2 years old. So, they're going to have that device for so many more years, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Well, sorry, I didn't even address your question. Your question was that what do I think about the
robots and that.
the robots and the fact that electronics and AI and computers are going to be so much part of our life. I will make this one comment. Okay, so this is fact. Mental health is getting worse. So more and more kids are suffering from depression and anxiety than ever before.
Yeah,
I don't have to quote the stats. Just go to Dr. Google and you'll see the stats. The stats are very, very overwhelming.
mm,
57% of our children today have some sort of chronic illness. Now, just listen to that, Alan. That means the majority of our children have some sort of chronic illness, whether it's a chronic inflammatory condition, asthma, diabetes, PTSD, anxiety, depression, or half. So the majority of our children now have some sort of chronic illness. I think that a lot of illness is related to stress. And it's not just me that thinks that. There's data to support that stress is very, very bad for you physically, physiologically, pathologically, it's bad for you. Well, what used to help us get over stress? The thing that used to help us get over stress was our sanctuary. It was going home to an environment of love, caring, compassion, solitude, peace, etc., etc. So the home was our a sanctuary. And I don't know. Well, you're pretty young, but when I was a lad, no one would call on the telephone after a certain time, like 9 o'clock. It was
yeah,
rude. It was not right to do that. And so we knew that from 9 o'clock at night till 9 in the morning, you were in a very safe zone.
yeah,
And what that allowed the brain to do was reset. So any stress that you had to put up with during that day, you knew that you could go home, be surrounded by loved ones, watch a bit of TV or relax, listen to some music, and it would reset your brain. Well, sadly, where can you go now for your sanctuary? Where can you go now to reset and get away from screens or get away from bullies or get away from fake news? There's virtually nowhere you can go because you're always contactable. You've got your phone on. If you're not on your phone, you're on your computer. If you're not on that, you're on social media of some description. And so, there's no longer safe zones or there's no longer sanctuaries where children go to, where their minds can reset and go back to a very healthy sort of network. So yes, that's my long answer to I am worried about allowing more and more technology to govern our lifestyle as it is today. Yeah.
and it's amazing, like thinking like a smoker or something. If they haven't got a smoke in their hands, or they have been a smoker, they can, their hand still thinks that movement or wanting to touch something like a pencil. And it's amazing when kids, I've been told, and with my wife before, our kids are well grown up, but like kids, they'll have their mobile phone down, but they'll be wanting to pick at something or anything because they're so used to something in their hand touching that sensation, and it's weird because their hands have to keep moving.
Well, and it's sad. I mean, I love keeping my mobile phone at home and not taking it with me, but I mean, sadly,
Yeah, you can't.
when you go out, you got to pay. Well, you pay with it, you do this with it. Oh my God.
Mm,
And so we're all sadly guilty of being obsessed with and, obsessed with and consumed by our phones and, being in touch
mm,
and knowing what's going on and comparing our lives with other people's lives and
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
sift through all the news and figure out what's true and what isn't true. Oh my God. Oh, well,
and
it's
then
just, it's
and
overwhelming.
and then getting overwhelmed by I never listened to it, reality TV. Like everything's reality TV. Getting married at first sight, this first sight. I don't know. The first car you buy, whatever. Reality TV is just
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy. And getting to the and I hope you enjoyed it and what I have asked you. This is kind of no, just going a little bit about being a doctor. You operated on many children, of course. Talking to an adult and telling an adult, they have a brain tumor or something. When a child's old enough, how do you approach that? It mustn't be easy. One, I know you probably had to say you have to be honest with them straight away, but how have you approached that over the years to talk to a young child who understands?
Yeah, no, it's a skill that I would like to think that I've sort of honed, and I mostly get it right. I'm sure there are some people where they think, oh my God, he's just too truthful, too honest, too in your face, too blunt. And I am aware of that, and I try and preempt any sort of conversation like that with like, please can you tell me what you'd like me to say? Because this is how I approach things. I like being truthful. It may hurt a little bit, but I like being truthful. And sometimes they go, well, if you don't mind, we'd rather little Johnny not hear that. And so they make Johnny leave the room. At other times they say, please don't mention this word or that word. And I respect those wishes. But if they don't put any parameters on me, here's what I do. I basically always tell the truth. So that's the first thing. Because if you don't tell the truth, then they'll never believe you ever again. So you lied to me the first time. Why would I believe that you're telling the truth now? So that's the first thing. You've just got to tell the truth. The second thing is you've always got to give people hope, Alan. I mean, even if there's the hope is the odds are stacked against them, like a 1 in a million chance of survival, then I can't see why you can't identify that as a potential outcome. And that's what I've been condemned for, and that's what a lot of people say that I act unprofessionally because I because I'm too hopeful. Well, I don't know. I just think you need to do that. I mean, yeah, and it's not. It's the truth anyway. Because I've
Mm,
had patients that in my heart of heart, think they're going to die for sure from their brain cancer.
yeah,
And they're still alive, like 10, 17 years later, they're still
yeah,
alive, and they really shouldn't be. So it's not as if I'm lying when I say there's a bit of hope. It is true that miracles do happen.
yeah,
And so, guilty is charged. I always bring that up. So I say to them things like, sadly, the odds are stacked against you. Most people, or by far the majority of people, die with this disease within a year of diagnosis. But if you don't mind, I'd love to tell you about some of the good cases, where, I've got a nurse who was operated on 27 years ago and she's still alive with a malignant brain cancer. And so, yeah, I think it's very, very important to always offer that hope that, they may be the exception to the rule. And then the final thing I always say is that, I think that you've got to treat every patient according to their individual needs.
yeah,
And so you don't just have a blanket rule of saying this or saying that. For example, if someone is at a stage in their life where death doesn't scare them,
yeah,
I see nothing wrong with saying, listen, if you don't have the fight in you, if you are now 69 years of age, you've had a great life, you know that the odds are stacked way against you with this disease. You know that it's going to take surgery, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, feeling sick, losing your hair, etc., to try and beat this, even though the odds are stacked against you, then there's nothing wrong with saying, I've had enough and I'm not willing to fight it. And if that's the case, I'm behind them 100%. I
yeah,
had it when they say that, but
of course,
occasionally some people are in that frame of mind where
yeah,
they don't have the energy, they don't have the power and the strength to fight it. And, I think a doctor's role is to support them just as much if they're in that situation as the other situation where they want to go for the 1%.
mm. No, I think that's true. I'll quickly just roll on three little quick things and then make sure I don't keep you too long today. But one thing is, like you said, telling a patient the truth or something. What helped me very young, I had another ophthalmologist who's well known, and I think it was like 16, maybe younger. And he said to me, he knew with my eye disease, one day I'm going to lose one of my eyes. And he just knew it from his training and what he had been going. He said, listen, I don't want to scare you. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but I want to be the doctor who kind of tells you this is a possibility. Then 5 years' time or 8 to 10 years' time, and suddenly you get another doctor who will be your doctor then saying it's got to come out, and you never know. And it helped so much. And it was like I was ready. When the doctor told me, I was ready. And I accepted it so easy. And when doctors can be that truthful and give you that, I suppose, warning and that, it's amazing what it can do to a patient.
It is.
Um, mm,
It's empowering for the patients. And
yeah,
I've never had a patient say anything wrong about telling the truth. I've had
no,
people come back and say, we didn't like what you said, but we're so appreciative that you said it because it then allowed us to take control, take some control. Yeah.
yeah. And one of the last things I'll say before I ask you my last couple of questions is it's amazing, like you said, when a patient, may say, listen, I don't want to do this, and you accept it, like you said, it's hard. And my dad was a very strong man. He died in cancer in the end, but he had to have a major operation, uh, a hernia operation, a year or so before he actually got cancer and passed away. And it was a huge operation, and he was going to die. But it's amazing that day, and I learned what strength was when the doctors were there, and they said, the percentage of coming off the table is not good, But Dad said, well, let's do it. But he said to him, listen, I'm ready, and I don't look at anyone what's going to do today. Whatever happens, if I pass away, I do, and if I don't, I don't. But I'm ready for which one it's going to be. And I thought, what a strength! And it's amazing strength when people know that they can be that close to death. The strength in them is just amazing. If that makes sense, I'm kind of lost my words there, but the strength is amazing.
No,
You would have
I
thought,
know exactly what you're saying. It's inspiring for me too. I get inspired every day by the courage of my patients. I
yeah,
mean, I've got a patient at the moment who I mean, he had no choice. He was dying, so he had to have the tumor taken out, but he's done very badly. He's barely waking up. He can't open his eyes. He can barely move one side of his body. And yet, before surgery, he could do all those things.
yeah,
And I keep thinking that, oh, God. And he stays positive, and his mother keeps saying to me he knew exactly what he was going into. And I mean, their courage, their conviction, their empathy, their strength, it's all very, very inspiring. And, I love seeing that part of the human spirit. It really
it,
does, make me, feel that humans are inherently good people. And inherently do good things.
It is, and thanks for understanding. I mumbled my words up. The last two things, and then I'll ask the question. Like you said about there, who chooses way, and I heard you say Stan Zemanek chose his way that he probably could have lived for a bit longer, but
Mhm.
his love was for talking, and he said,
Talking.
he couldn't talk. Take, and the other one I actually heard before the last two questions, and I will come to the end, is I know I was listening to a podcast a while back where you said it shows what patients and the connections where you got a call from a patient, and I don't know if we can name him, who was going to pass away in America, and he rang you and said, "This is probably my last night, and I thank you." How does that feel? It's when there's everyone against you. Well, I won't say everyone, your family is, but that call just must make it like you can all f off. I don't give a shit. This is what I do it for.
That's exactly how it made me feel. It
Yeah,
really did. It made me feel like you can throw as much shit at me as you like, but as long as I have made such an impact on a patient that they're willing to call me on their deathbed and thank me, that's enough.
okay.
I feel like my role on this earth has been fulfilled. It really did. It was a lovely, lovely thing to do, and he could have. Oh my God! He could have spoken to anyone, called anyone, his friends, his children, anyone, and he called me the night before he died.
Okay. Thank you for that story. And that's why I wanted to try to finish it off at the start, showing who you are proper and at the end. And I hope you have enjoyed it. But the last two questions I'm going to ask you, and I hope you have enjoyed how I talk and what we're going into. Who would you know, and this is kind of asked everyone, a friend or someone you would know that you have enjoyed this podcast? And like I said, I'm trying to talk to so many genres of people. I don't care who they are, sports persons, doctors, nurses, the everyday person. Have you got anyone you would say, hey, this guy's, a good interviewer. I really enjoyed this today.
My God, all my friends. Look, I don't want to blow smoke up your ass, Alan,
Yeah,
but you're pretty inspirational too,
thank
because,
you.
when someone loses a sense, and we've only got five of them, especially the sense of sight, it'd be very, very easy to curl up in a ball and feel sorry for yourself. You've done the opposite. You sort of like it's now sort of driven you to greater heights, and so that's incredibly inspirational. So I think you'd be a fool not to accept your invitation. When you told me that you were blind, and yet you were sort of making the best of your abilities, I was looking forward to the podcast. I wasn't dreading it at all. I was looking forward to it. And I think you tell anyone that you're a blind person who used to have vision, it hasn't put you into a state of depression or melancholy. It's in fact given you strength to, rise to greater heights, and they'll want to be interviewed by you, I'm sure.
Okay, well, if you have anyone what about someone um, uh, famous that you would like to hear that you'll wait? I know you said Nadella at the start, sorry, get the word back in my mouth. Who else would you like to hear on my podcast that you might, driving to work, that you always like hearing getting
Oh, look,
interviewed?
my dearest friend, who I have so much respect for, who's one of the greatest Australians who've ever lived, is a guy called Steve Waugh.
Yep,
Now, a lot of
great
the younger
cricketer.
generation don't realise how magnificent this guy is, but
Oh,
he
yeah.
is just, the guy's a gentleman. He's got great moral fortitude. He's always thinking about others, and others who are less fortunate than him. We were walking along a beach one day and he saw a building, an old cottage. And rather than thinking, gee, I wouldn't mind having a holiday in that cottage, or what a lovely cottage, the first thing he thinks of is, wouldn't it be great if we could use that cottage to help underprivileged people enjoy the beach?
That's amazing. That's
He's that sort of
amazing.
person, Steve Waugh. So, yeah, if you can get on, I mean, if you want me to put a good word in for you, I'd be very happy to do that for you.
Charlie, I will. And again, I want to finish off for saying the words what you said to me. And I think the last things I'll say about what you said about me doing this. One, I think you need a great family, and I got the most wonderful wife whose birthday it is today. Two amazing kids and family around me. And as you would have known, with your daughters and your family around you, that got you through what you were going through too. But what I look at is, listen, I look into my ophthalmologist, who will come on this, who's a very good friend. But I'm walking in, and I know I'm walking out that I'm living. But that's why I look at what I got. People are walking into you, and the chance of living is good if you're operating on them. But there's people out there power-wise who can't move, who cannot talk. I'm lucky. That's what I think. We have to think there's someone always worse out there than us, and
Oh, my God, yes.
that's how I look at it. There's someone worse out there. They can't hear today. They're dying of an awful cancer. Maybe I can't see, but hey, it can be a superpower. And I've got a wonderful wife, friends, and that's all I look up to. And
Yeah,
that's,
no, it's a great way to approach life. And when people say to me, gee, Charlie, how'd you get through all of that? You lost this, you lost that, you had this against you, you had media against you. And I go, well, I didn't have brain cancer.
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Charlie, thank you again for accepting. It's been incredible. Everything I thought of you and what I read about and listened about in the book, it's all true. And I hope you enjoyed it. And again, thanks for coming on the podcast today. And I hope that soon someone will come along and have heaps of money and open that hospital for you. And when they do, hey, I might even come in and interview you in the hospital. Hey?
that'd be nice. Okay, Alan, thank you very much. It's been
Thanks,
a
Charlie.
pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Thanks, Heinz.
Thanks, Charlie. Thank you so much.